everybody, welcome back to my channel, Finding Faith in Fiction. I'm Chrissy, and in this video I'm going to share my reviews for the last 3 books that I read in June, along with my June wrap-up. I read 3 books in the second half of June, which were Part of Your World by Karen Witemeyer, 𝑐𝑚𝑒 and Coworkers by Amanda Tero Matthews, and Crown of Destiny by Ashton Dorow. All 3 of these were really great books, but 2 of them wormed their way into 5-star, definitely top reads of the month favorites. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the reviews. The first book that we'll talk about is Part of Your World by Karen Witemeyer. I was so excited. This was a highly anticipated release for me, and it is book 2 in her Once Upon a Time in Texas series. As some of you might know from my previous videos, I had read To Love a Beast back last year and absolutely loved it. It was like a hardcore 5-star. And I also read some of her, what series is this? Texas Ever After fairy tale retellings, but didn't find that I liked them as much as To Love a Beast. So I was very curious how Part of Your World would fall, if I loved it as much as To Love a Beast, or if it was more in line with the Texas Ever After series, or somewhere in between. So I'm excited to talk about it and give you my ratings and what I really enjoyed about this book. So I will say this was a 5-star book for me, and so was To Love a Beast. But I do slightly favor To Love a Beast, and honestly I think it's just because it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And that's saying a lot because as a kid I was like hardcore Little Mermaid. My bedroom was Little Mermaid. I had all the action figures, all the Barbies, all the things. I did go through a Beauty and the Beast phase a little bit later, but like Little Mermaid was my jam as a kid. But yeah, I think I just really like the Beauty and the Beast tropes, and so I tend to enjoy those retellings a bit more. With that said, this was an amazing book and I really enjoyed it, and it was 5 stars still. So I did give this book 5 stars for the writing because Karen Witemeyer. Characters and plot, 5.0. I really liked the main characters. There are some characters in this book that you love to hate because they're villains, but they were written really well, and I did enjoy the plot and kind of the setup of the story and the uniqueness. Even though it was a fairy tale retelling, it was still very much its own story. Faith and content, I gave 5 stars. Her books are always super faith-filled. And then enjoyability, I gave it a 5-star as well. So some things that I really enjoyed. We have Muriel is our like Ariel character in the story. She is of Irish descent, so she has a really sweet accent throughout the book, and it took me longer to read the book this way because I was trying to read it in my head with her Irish accent anytime it was her dialogue, which slowed me down a bit, but I actually really enjoyed doing that. So just a weird quirky thing. In this story, she is like a massive swimmer. She doesn't just swim for enjoyment, but it's kind of like a sport for her, I guess. She doesn't do it like in a competitive way, but she is a very strong swimmer. She loves to be in the water, and that's like a big part of like who she is. She loves the beach, loves to be in the water. Then we have Zane, who is the Eric of the story. He is not a prince, but he is the son of like a wealthy businessman. And I also really liked him as a character. Even though he's from a wealthy family, he kind of wants to like set himself apart from that, and he kind of cares more about the things in life that should be more important, like family and happiness, more than money, which makes his father very upset. He also has like a very sweet grandfather who wasn't wealthy. He grew up like normal, and he's just really down to earth and like a great character. Then we have the Ursula character. Her name's Octavia, and she is a music teacher / matchmaker. And it was a really interesting combination. And if you read the historical notes and kind of the author's notes at the end of this book, you'll find out that the music academy that was a part of this book is actually a real historical music academy in Galveston, which is where the book is set. And it's called the Ursuline, I think. Music Academy, something like that. I could probably look it up real quick. And so Karen Witemeyer talks about how when she saw that that was like a real place and it sounds like Ursula, that she had to do something with that with the Ursula character. And so I just thought that was really fun. Okay, what is it called? Yeah, Ursuline. Or wait, no. What was it? Okay, Google was not my friend there, but yes, okay, it is the Ursuline Music Academy. You can actually Google pictures of it, and she even incorporated the story of an architect who like built it in the story. So that was like, it was just really cool how she connected all of the real historical parts of Galveston in the late 1800s to the Little Mermaid story and the main characters in this, like just so good. And I think that's what really blew my mind with this book, is how well connected the fictional elements were to the real historical elements. For me, that's like the chef's kiss of historical fiction, is when the two just blend seamlessly. And I love to go on like historical rabbit holes looking up photos. I was able to do that really well with The Lumber Baron's Wife too, by Lynn Austen. Like when I can go actually find the real things that were in the story that happened in real life, like I just love that. I love to go on a tangent with that. So that was all really cool. There were also really strong music themes throughout this book, which makes sense for Little Mermaid because of her voice and how Ursula steals her voice. Now, how that went in this book was a little bit different, but Muriel is a really good singer. She just sings in her church choir though, at her little small church that she goes to, so she's not like seeking fame or anything. But part of her deal with the Ursula character Octavia does have to do with music, and she does try to like control her voice in a sense, but it's done in a different way. She doesn't like steal her voice in a magical way. She just tells her like to be quiet and not to use it, which I'll get into in a minute. But there were also like a lot of old classic hymns throughout the story, which I really loved. I love a good classic hymn. And then there is a rescue scene towards the end of the book that's kind of like our big climax. And I thought that was really interesting. We'll get into that. A couple of content warnings straight off the bat. We do have a boat accident near drowning. There's a kidnapping. There's definitely lies and betrayal all around, and manipulation, blackmail, and exploitation. Could it be that without? Could you have a Little Mermaid story with an Ursula inspired character without those things? I don't think so. Okay, so we have Muriel, who's this swimmer, loves to be at the beach, spends a lot of time. This one day she's standing out on like the way I made sense of it in the story is that it was like a jetty, like a rocky jetty, and she was like standing up on one of the rocks and just like singing a hymn. And Zane he has a boat. I think, was it his father or grandfather gifted him this little sailboat. So he's out sailing. He hears Muriel singing from the little cove that she's in, which was quite private, and he's mesmerized by her voice to the point that he starts singing along with her, although she can't hear him. And he's so distracted that the wind blows one of the is it a boom, a beam, whatever the thing is that swings. Sailing. I'm not a sailor. I've only done it once. And knocks him out unconscious into the water. So Muriel sees it. She's not supposed to be in the water. Her father had like given her, some harsh instruction and tough love, and was like, you need to stay out of the water until you can get your life together. So she jumps in to save him despite not being allowed to be in the water, and pulls him to shore, but runs away when his grandfather kind of comes. And so he doesn't ever have a chance to really know who she is. So after the fact, he just remembers like a flash of red hair and the voice that had been singing before he got knocked out. So he is like smitten with this person who rescued him, goes to try to find her, just like in the regular Little Mermaid. She does not want to be found because she, I think, recognized, did she recognize him? No, not yet. she's kind of also keeping an eye out for him as well, but I think she eventually realizes that he's wealthy and that it wouldn't be good for her to be seen by him, because it would be like improper the way she like went into the water and all of the things. So they're both trying to find each other, shouldn't be finding each other, but she just really can't stop thinking about him. So she talks to her friend and finds out about this matchmaker, 𝐞𝐞𝐫𝐿, and goes to 𝐞𝐞𝐫𝐿 to see if there's anything she can do to help her, because she knows that his family is not going to accept her. She's from a poor immigrant family and is just, you know, she knows he's from a wealthy family and it's not going to bode well. So she meets 𝐞𝐞𝐫𝐿, they kind of strike a deal. I won't go into the details of that. And they kind of find some clever non-magical ways for her to be set up with Zane, and in a way that his family will accept her. And 𝐞𝐞𝐫𝐿 is kind of like trying to use deceit, and while Muriel is like not super happy about it, she goes along with it even though she knows it's wrong, because she just really wants to like have a chance with him. So drama galore entails. There's family drama, again, deceit and lies. What was interesting, without giving away too much, is that Muriel, unlike in the Little Mermaid story, she does kind of come clean, and even though it could put her family at like extreme risk, because 𝐞𝐞𝐫𝐿 is like a crazy person and she can like straight up ruin anybody. So anyway, then there's a kidnapping that takes place, and all of the characters kind of come together despite their differences and, you know, feelings about each other to try to get back the person that was kidnapped. And that's kind of like our big climax moment, and so on. So that's all I'll say. But I thought she does such a good job with her Texas, you know, settings and the historical parts. The faith, again, was like really super strong. You know, the latter half of the book deals with a lot of like intense events with like the kidnapping and the drama and stuff. But she managed to use the faith in a way that even in those moments, there was still hope, and it was still, the faith content was still very uplifting. So I liked that balance. Like there was some drama, there was some intensity and some grit, but it was balanced with like hope and uplifting faith at the same time. So that for me kept it from feeling, you know, the things I don't like, where it gets like too intense and too dark and any of that. So let's see, is there anything else I wanted to mention? Yeah, I don't think so. As always with a series, I guess I shouldn't say as always, it's only two, as is the case with both of these books, if you're not like a super big fan of fairy tale retellings, I think you would still enjoy this because of the strong faith, because of so much of the historical detail incorporated in, and because the characters, while they are inspired by characters from The Little Mermaid, still have their own unique spins and can kind of stand alone apart from the fairy tale. So regardless of if you like fairy tale retellings or not, I think this would still be an enjoyable read. Again, as typical with her books that I've read, you know, the faith is strong, her storytelling's amazing, her writing's amazing. So I overall just recommend this book as part of this series. They do not go in order, they're standalone. So if you have not read To Love a Beast, you could still read this one. Although I do recommend reading both of them because they're just that good. So again, this was a great 5-star read for me this one, and made it to my top 3, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. The next book is 𝐭𝐡𝐢𝑤 and Coworkers by Amanda Tero Matthews, and I actually signed up for the ARC team for this book because it sounded like a really fun summer read and a really unique premise. So this book features our FMC Natalia and our MMC Noah, and they share two things in common. They both work for the same publishing company as editors, and Noah actually dated Natalia's sister Gianna previously. They were engaged but are now broken up. So that sets the stage already for a really interesting story. Basically, Natalia is given this opportunity to write a narrative style biography, I guess you could say, about this island off the coast of Georgia, and only has a month to do it. So she's been wanting to get more into like the fiction side of writing, whereas she's mostly been focused on nonfiction. She's been doing a lot of editing, but she wants the chance to write more. So she is given this opportunity to write this biographical book for this island called 𝘊𝘰𝘢𝘳𝑗 that has a really unique history behind it. It's like a private island, family run. And when she's given the opportunity, she's immediately doubtful. I don't know if I can do this. It's only a month. I've never done this kind of project before. She's doubting herself. So she asks her boss for help. And they basically give her two choices: Noah or this other person who she really just cannot stand in the company. So she does not think either of these are great choices, but she ultimately goes with Noah because she knows he's really good at his job and should be less dramatic than the other girl, even though she's really nervous because it is her sister's ex-fiance. So Noah gets the news that Natalia asked for him, immediately is like, red flags, guard up, because he has a certain set of assumptions about Natalia because of her being the sister of his ex-fiance, but he agrees to do the project. So they are both sent to this island called 𝘊𝘰𝘢𝘳𝑗. They are given like 5-star accommodations, everything paid for. They've got like an expense account for food and activities and sightseeing and the whole bit. And the catch is just that they have to write this book in 1 month. So they kind of work together to set up a plan. Natalia just is really struggling with like feeling confident in the process. So Noah kind of like coaches her on like, all right, here's a timeline, here's an outline of what we're gonna do. Let's start with this, then move to this, then move to this. And so they kind of are struggling to get along as they start working together. They end up working in this historical lighthouse, and there's like a small museum attached to it. So Noah works in like a conference room at the base, and Natalia keeps trekking up all of the stairs every day and sits at the top of the lighthouse to do her work. They're trying to kind of maintain distance from each other in their work and free time because they're just not exactly hitting it off. So this was a really cute story. I did really enjoy it, but I'm going to talk about some things I enjoyed and one aspect that I didn't totally love in this book. So what I enjoyed were like the vacation island vibes. Like I said, it's like a private owned island. It's definitely a vacation type island. People go there for vacation. There are some people that live there full time, like business owners and such, which give it like a really fun vibe, like that small town, close-knit community vibe. So I liked that aspect. The lighthouse was cool. I liked that Natalia and Noah are doing historical research. They're going through old primary documents, photos, journals, business records, like all these things, just boxes and boxes of history from the owners, the family that owns the island. And I think the island goes back like quite a few generations. So they're learning about the original two owners. They're learning about them and their love story and how they came to own the island, and then all the generations after. So that part was really creative and cool. The island isn't real. It's not a real place. So it was made up. It was fictional. But I like that they made it feel historical in some elements. I did like the sister's ex-fiance trope. I feel like usually, isn't it like brother's ex-fiance? I don't know. Either way, I enjoyed that, though I did not like the sister at all. I liked the coworker romance in this one. I thought it was cute. I can't say that's normally a trope like I gravitate towards, but I enjoyed it. The bike rides were really sweet. And then it mentions throughout the story all these little local restaurants and cafes that they go to throughout their stay there, and just everything they eat from these fictional restaurants and cafes made me so hungry. They all sounded amazing and really fun and creative. So I loved that. A couple of small content warnings. There wasn't much, but I would say there is definitely an abusive sibling. Gianna the sister slash ex-fiance is just very emotionally abusive and very manipulative, very easy to dislike character. And I do give props to the author. She wrote her really well because she's very easy to dislike in the story. But if you have any history of like family members being emotionally abusive, this might be a little bit tough. There is a face slap that I wouldn't really call that violence, but it was a little feisty, I guess. And then there were definitely a lot of trauma reactions for Natalia. Like Noah has some baggage with Gianna and how their relationship ended that he's kind of dealing with. And he does kind of view Natalia in a bad light because of that relationship, even though she's a very different person than his ex. But Natalia has frequent trauma responses throughout the story. And that kind of gets into what I had a hard time with the story. So this is realistic. I feel like if someone was kind of under the thumb of an older sibling or even a parent who's just constantly bashing them and stripping them of their identity and their confidence and constantly putting them down and manipulating them and controlling them, I do think Natalia's behavior reflects that trauma. But it just was very frequent. And I know some of the other reviews mentioned this too. It just felt like a lot, and it felt a bit draining because she's just constantly down on herself. She's constantly emotional. She's constantly reacting. So that did become wearisome at some point in the story, because it just kept like her insecurity was such a heavy theme and thread and was rehashed in the story. So again, I feel like it was realistic based on her history, but I feel like it also kind of wears on Noah a bit because it makes it very hard to work with her because of that. And he's just constantly trying to like reassure her and almost like be her therapist at some points. And so I feel like that they do develop an attraction and a romance throughout the book, and I feel like that really impacted that because it's really hard to be attracted to somebody who has no idea like really who they are. They have no confidence, they have no self-worth. I feel like it's not super realistic even that he fell for her, because it would be very hard to fall for somebody like that. But he did see little, I guess, glimpses of her and her true personality and who she really was. So I guess it was sweet that he was able to like weed through that and see who she really was and could be. It was sweet that he kept trying to help her get past all of that, even though he was frustrated by it. So I had very mixed feelings about that whole dynamic throughout the story. Ultimately, I did like how their romance kind of developed and ended. There was kind of a big conflict where Gianna shows up and causes trouble and things get really rocky and they walk away from each other, and that's all I'll say about that. I don't think that's a spoiler, but yeah, so it was, again, it was very realistic, I think, to how somebody would act in that situation, but it was just, for like a sweet summer romance, it was just a bit, like a bit heavy and a bit wearisome to keep going through that same scenario like so many times. I think we could have had it like a few key moments throughout the story without it being so repetitive in that way. So again, overall, I really enjoyed this book. I liked the romance. I loved the setting. And I think the author is not sure. She's not sure if this is going to be like a prequel, like a book 0 or a book 1. My feedback to her was this, I think, could be a solid book 1, even though it kind of includes the history. It felt like a book 1 to me, and I think there could be like lots of spin-offs in future books. So we'll see how she decides to handle that. But it will be part of a series about Everwood Island. And I will probably read them because I really enjoyed the island and how she described it. It just felt so, like vacation-y homey and cozy and summery. I just really loved that part of the book. She did a really great job creating that world for the setting of the story. So I will definitely keep reading. For my rating, I gave the writing 4 stars. Again, there wasn't necessarily anything particularly wrong with her writing. Again, yeah, it was just kind of for me like some repetition that went a little bit too much for me. Characters and plot, I did give it a 3.5 because while I understood where she was coming from with Natalia, again, it just felt like a lot for me. And I know there were other reviewers who also said something similar. So 3.5 for that. Faith and content, I gave it a 4.0. It did have light to moderate faith throughout that I thought was really nice and done well. And then enjoyability, I did give it a 4.5 stars because despite those few little issues I had, I did really enjoy the book. So overall, if you're looking for a sweet summer romance with a really beautiful, like small town coastal island setting, then I definitely think you should check it out. It was really sweet. The last book that I ended the month of June with was Crown of Destiny, and that is by Ashton Dorow. This is book 1 in the Crown of, I don't know how to say this, 𝘊𝘰𝘢𝘴𝘵. I'm hoping that's right, 𝘊𝘰𝘢𝘴 series. This book, oh my gosh, I found this book on Instagram, found the author's page, watched some of her like little clips and posts about the book, and while it sounded really good, I just did not see this coming. Wow. That's it. That's my review. I'm leaving it there. No, I'm just kidding. You guys know I talk way too much to just say that. This was such a good book. This was such an amazing book. This was my favorite in June, and I will be surprised if this is not in my top 3 to 5 for the year. It was that good. And again, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, it just checked off all the boxes, and I was so blown away by everything about this book. So I'm going to gush. If you don't like a gush, I'm sorry, but I'm here to gush. So again, Ashton is a new to me author. She does have previous books that I have not read, and this was just the first book that I happened to come across from her. This was a new release. It just came out, I think in mid-June. Yeah, like June 16th. So I was reading this, only maybe a week after it came out. It does not have enough reviews. So please go find this book, read this book, and review this book because it deserves so many more reviews than it has. I think it only has 64, so it needs more. All right, let's talk about what I liked, and then we'll kind of get into like the story and stuff. So what I enjoyed, the writing. New favorite author. I definitely plan on going through her backlist while I eagerly wait for book 2 of the series, which I definitely will be reading. There was mention of dragons and a dragon in the story. He was a bad guy, but I still liked that there was a dragon in it. I didn't realize I was a dragon person, but I think I am. It's kind of like a he protects her, yet she saves him dynamic, which was really fun. I don't know if I'm using this term correctly, guys. I'm almost 40, so I'm not cool anymore, but I put in my review that she is like a baddie FMC, and I know that's maybe like not exactly the right use of that word, but she was so sweet, so humble, so open to like hearing and learning from other people and from like the god character. I don't know if he's really a character. It was allegory, so the god in the story. And she was very good at using her bow and arrow to like just destroy whatever threat there was, and I don't think she realized how much of a baddie she was, so that was kind of fun. This book was super clean, super clean. You're gonna want the main characters to kiss, and they get close a couple times, but it's slow burn. The author did say the romance is gonna pick up in book 2, so I'm rooting for a kiss in book 2, but there was none in this story. So it was super clean. I loved the faith allegory that she did in this book. I believe she calls God the Eternal One, and it was, oh wow, the use of faith in the book was so good. Another thing I loved was the journey. So our main characters kind of end up thrown together based on circumstances, and they kind of set off on a journey together. And this very much kind of felt like a Lord of the Rings type journey, where they leave what they know and they just go off into the unknown to accomplish this thing that they don't even really understand fully, but they're committed to it. And it definitely wasn't quite as dramatic or epic in the sense that Lord of the Rings is in terms of that, the scale of that journey, but it just felt like important like that. This actually was a retelling of the David and King Saul story from 1 Samuel. I'm in 1 Samuel right now in my Bible, and I haven't read 2 Samuel in a while, so I don't remember how much of their story was in 1 Samuel versus 2 Samuel, but it's a retelling of that story. And not only is it a retelling of David and King Saul, it is gender flipped. So the King Saul is a queen, and the David is our FMC. Is it Aelith? I think so. Yeah, Aelith. So it was cool that it was a biblical retelling, but it was also gender flipped. So it was like the females were the main characters. So that was, how she did that was very, very good. And I really, really, really liked it. There are some content warnings because of the nature of this. There is some very typical like fantasy type violence in this. So there is on-page death across the book in multiple ways. So that's just part of it. It does tell you what happened. It does describe it. It is a bit gory at times. There is a corrupt queen and soldiers. And so you see a lot of violence against like just the innocent people, citizens in the kingdom or whatever it's called, by the queen's soldiers. So there's pillaging, there's burning, there's brutality that happens throughout. It has war violence. There is like some war scenes between kingdoms. And so you're seeing, you know, people with swords, with bows and arrows, with daggers, with a dragon, you know, fighting each other, killing each other, etc. There is also some mention of trafficking in the story. One of kind of the corruptions of the queen is that she, in order to like secure the kingdom and her own reign, she kind of gets involved in like slave trafficking of her own people, like letting other kingdoms come in and take people to go be slaves in other places. I don't want to say more than that. So it's kind of like political / forced slavery, I guess, is how I would describe it. So it is intense content-wise. As somebody who's very sensitive, I did not find this over my limit of like gore and death and fighting. Yeah, I don't know why, I just didn't. For my rating for this book, it was 5 stars across the board. This is rare, but this is one I would give 6 stars to, honestly, if I could. I guess I could. Fine, 6 stars. So this is like a book that I will buy a physical copy of. That will be in my collection once I get back to America, which is coming soon, guys. That's all I'm gonna say, but more to be announced of that, but it's coming soon. So I'm so excited to go home and buy all of my favorite books and have them on a pretty shelf. I'm so excited. So pray for me, please. It's a big thing happening. But anyway, that will be like a reread book for sure, like one that I absolutely treasure. And I think what made it so special for me is that it was a biblical retelling, but it also, it felt historical, it had fantasy elements, so it was like a cool combination of everything I love in books. So it felt historical fiction at times, even though it wasn't real, but it had that feeling because there's so much history of this world that she builds. And like the history of like how the kingdom came to be and how there were like these 12 kind of like tribes. They call it kindreds in the book, but so it has that historical element of like Bible history too, of like the 12 tribes. So anyway, it has that feel. It's definitely fantasy vibes with the world. It's non-magical, but you have the dragon and some other elements that you get that fantasy part from. And then, yeah, it's got like the biblical tie-in and the faith content and a very sweet slow burn romance that is just like, between all of them put together, I finished that book and I'm just like, whew, it was a wicked book hangover. And I even went to her Instagram and commented on one of her posts about it and was like, I'm so mad at you because I had the worst book hangover and now I have to wait an unspecified amount of agonizingly long time for book 2 to come out. How could you do this to us? Like, it was one of those where I was so just like, what am I going to do until book 2 comes out? So I don't know if you will all agree with me at how amazing this book is, but I loved it. Writing, 5 stars, maybe 6. She is super talented, like super talented. Again, I have not read her other books, but she is going to be an auto-buy author for me, and I'm definitely going to be going back through and reading her backlist until the next book comes out in this series. I already said that, sorry, but like I'm just super hyped up about this book. Characters and plot, 5 stars. Everything about the characters in this book and the plot of this book was superb. I loved Aelith. I loved Cain. I even loved the Wicked Queen. And her, yeah, she's complicated. She's very complicated, and I'll get into that in a little bit. The faith, again, just so good. While the content was intense, I did not take off any stars for it because it didn't cross that line of like, ugh, you know, it was okay. And then enjoyability, again, I gave it a 5, but honestly, probably a 6 or a 10, like whatever. It was so good. Okay. So let's get a little bit into the story. I don't want to give spoilers, but basically Queen Aerys had been chosen by these master scholars. There was there one per of the kindreds or more? I don't really know, but she had been chosen by one of the master scholars to be the queen of this kingdom. And she started off as she was in nobility, but she was very sweet, just like a very sweet, kind young girl. And the Eternal One chooses her, and the Master Scholar, announces and anoints her kind of like King Saul. And as she gets into her queenship, she just becomes corrupt. It goes to her head. She seeks power. She seeks vengeance. She seeks, she does whatever she has to do to maintain what she has. And eventually she turns away from the Eternal One because she knows what she's done's wrong, and it goes against what he wanted her to do. So she's very aware that she's crossed the line into like corruptness and evil, but she's like, I'm here. I just got to keep going because it's the only way to secure my reign and my line. She has a daughter whose name is, I think, Lavanna, who is like the Jonathan character. And so while she's like this evil, corrupt queen in terms of like politics, she has this daughter that she genuinely loves and wants to protect and secure, her line so that her daughter can one day be queen. So she is complex. But then one of the master scholars hears from the Eternal One that there is to be a new queen. And Queen Aerys catches wind of this and seeks to have all of these master scholars either imprisoned or killed, because if they're not alive, they can't announce a new queen. They can't anoint a new queen. But there's this one that's in hiding, and our main male character, Cain, meets this scholar and he's like an old man, ends up like going along with him like as his protector, and they're kind of hiding out to avoid getting captured or killed by Queen Aerys. And so where the story picks up is that Cain and 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐻 meet by chance in this market. There's like a scuffle, and 𝐾ain like protects her, and then they go their separate ways, and he keeps thinking about her. They run into each other in the woods, in the forest at one point, and he goes back to the hideout where his master scholar is and tells him about this girl, and the master scholar is like, she's the one. She's the prophesied one, like, take me to her. So he basically goes to her family and tells the family, hey, she is the next queen. And they, instead of being like, great, wonderful, amazing, they freak out because it's treason, and they know Queen Eris will have their whole family if anybody is saying that their daughter is the next queen. Like, they know it's very dangerous. So they're like, get out of here, leave, go away. So they do, they leave respectfully, and 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐻 ends up following them later on, and a bunch of stuff happens. And I can't really tell you what happens in the middle because it's a major spoiler, but she ends up going to them, and there ends up being a journey between a few of them in a certain combination, and they are off. She kind of accepts her calling, and they set off to go do like her training. They need to train her in the art of warfare. She needs to learn about the history of the kingdom and the politics and like the culture of how a queen would act and all these things. But a war breaks out with a neighboring country, and 𝐾ain is sent off to go fight because he's a young man, and they're just conscripting, is that the right word? Conscripting all of the young men to go fight. And she ends up following them and ends up being faced with a decision about if she is going to be the one to save the kingdom when it comes down to it, when it needs to happen. So anyway, I hope I didn't get into any spoilers. I don't think so. I think most of that is in the description. But yeah, it was so good. And there were parts of the story that didn't have a ton of action. They're just in the forest, and they encounter an animal and they have to survive, or they need food and they have to survive, or now they go to this place, you know, to do her training, and they're sword fighting and she's tired and her muscles hurt. So like there's parts that are just so not exciting, but again, it's just that journey was done so well, and it was just really good. So I'm gonna stop talking now. But basically, if you like fantasy, this is a must read. If you like dragons, again, go give it a read. If you like biblical retellings that are just done so excellently, this wasn't just a biblical fiction. This was a fantasy biblical retelling, and that's such an odd genre, but it is that. And like I said, if any of the things that I mentioned appeal to you, then I definitely recommend that you go read this book. Right now on Goodreads, it has 24 reviews, but 27 ratings, and it has a 5-star. So right now this is a 5-star book, and I can't agree more. So this is definitely worth picking up and giving it a read. I hope you do. If you have already read it, or if you would like to read this, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective on it. If you did read it already, if you pick it up and read it, please come back and let me know what you thought of it, because I'd love to hear and talk about it with anybody who is willing to, because I loved it so much. All right, well, that is the 3 books that I read in the second half of June. Again, I think it was an impressive second half with 2 5-star books, and yeah, two favorites for sure. So let's go ahead and go through my June wrap up and talk about all the stats and data. So in June, I read 7 books total, and I'll review what those were. I gave each of them superlatives, as I always do over on my Instagram. So the sweetest read for me out of all of the books was 𝐬𝐿𝐼𝐻 and Ivy by Ashley Willingham. It's just such a sweet romance. Loved that. Most intense, I gave to Part of Your World by Karen Witemeyer, because of like the kidnapping and just the lies and manipulation. It had some intense moments. Although, I don't know, Crown of Destiny could have fit that too, but I gave that something else. Most dramatic I gave to Dance with a Duke by Gabrielle Meyer and Memory Lane by Becky Wade. They both had some quite dramatic parts in them. Strongest faith I gave to Gelato at the Villa. Although there were several books this month that had really strong faith, but I think for me that was the one that like impacted me personally and gave me some like conviction and takeaways from the book. So that's the one I gave to that. New favorite book and author I gave to Crown of Destiny. And then best summer read I gave to 𝑐𝐞𝐲 and Coworkers. Gelato at the Villa was also a good summer read, but 𝑐𝐞𝐲 and Coworkers definitely was like a summer, let's go sit on the beach and read, or let's go rent a vacation rental at the beach and have a vacation there. So those are my superlatives. So my ratings again, Memory Lane by Becky Wade was 4 stars. Gelato at the Villa by Robin Jones Gunn, 5 stars. To Dance with a Duke by Gabrielle Meyer, I gave like 4.5 to 4.8 stars. 𝘐𝐞𝐲 and Coworkers, 4 stars. 𝘐𝐞 and 𝐼𝐵, I think, was like a 4.5 to 4.8, also somewhere in there. So about 4.5 to 5. And Part of Your World by Karen Witemeyer, 5 star, and Crown of Destiny by Ashton E. Dorow, 5 stars. So 3 5 stars, 2 4.5 to 5, and 2 4 stars. So overall, a fantastic reading month. Again, most of these were new releases. I had been waiting for To Dance with a Duke, 𝘐𝐞 and 𝐼𝐵, Part of Your World. So those were 3 I had been like waiting to come out to read. And then I ended up finding out about Crown of Destiny at the last minute as well. So it was just such a great reading month. My top 3 reads for the month, I put Crown of Destiny in first place, and then second and third, it's kind of a tie. I can't really choose one. And this is a little bit interesting because, okay, let me tell you what they are and then I'll explain. So Gelato at the Villa and 𝘐𝐞 and 𝐼𝐵. What's interesting is that I gave Part of Your World 5 stars, but I didn't include that in my top 3, and I put 𝘐𝐞 and 𝐼𝐵 in there even though it was only like a 4.5 or 4.8 or something. So even though I gave a higher rating, 𝘐𝐞 and 𝐼𝐵 was the one that I have kept thinking about. And I don't think I'm going to change my rating because there was like a particular part of it that I talked about in my last video, my mid-June. So go watch that if you're curious. There was an aspect of it that I just wasn't, I wanted more. And so I'm not going to change that rating, but I still think about that book almost daily. And that was one of the ones I read earlier in the month. So it had to go in my top 3 because even though it wasn't an actual 5 star, I just keep thinking about it and the characters and how much I loved it. So there you go. All right, and then genre stats, yes. Women's fiction, 1 book, that was Gelato at the Villa. Fantasy 2, that was 𝘐𝐞 and 𝐼𝐵 and Crown of Destiny. Contemporary romance 2, 𝘐𝐞𝐲 and Coworkers and Memory Lane, forgetting my books. And then historical was also 2, and that was To Dance with a Duke and Part of Your World. So those are the genres that I read this month. Again, it was just such a great month overall. I really enjoyed all of the books, and yeah, I feel like some months I'm like, it's going to be hard to top this month, and then I'll have another month that equals it or tops it. But yeah, I just was really impressed with all of the new releases from this month. All right, guys, well, thank you so much for watching this very long video. As usual, if you made it to the end, please go ahead and drop a heart emoji in the comments. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. If you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked them, if you didn't like them, doesn't matter. Would love to hear from you. And as always, I look forward to having you back for my next video. Bye.